to the chat on my phone, so that way I can see what you guys are saying. But otherwise, hello everybody, and we are going to be doing a live stream of Titanic Demo 401. Let me turn my volume on my phone down. So I don't have any video of me on this in this live stream because I actually just came from a 2-year-old's birthday party. It was a family friend of ours. Their son was turning 2, and so I didn't realize there was a birthday today, and I was invited to it. So I went over to there, and then I was there for like 45 minutes, and then I had to like dash back here in time for the live stream. Let's go ahead and enter through first class this time. And yeah, so it was rather hectic. I had to run back here, and if anybody's seen me, I'm completely out of shape. So that was quite a run. Yeah, so I didn't have time to set up my camera or anything, but yeah, hello everyone. Hello Mark. This thing is still loading. I can see the corner of the screen. I have all my lights and everything set up because I was going to have me on video, but yeah, now the lights are in the way because otherwise I could enjoy this game without these lights in my face. Well, the lights aren't on, but still. Ozzy says potato room. I don't know if no, in this game there's no access to the potato room, but you can see a sack of potatoes by the stairs because I think the potato room is on the deck below that, but we'll have to see. Why is this game taking so long to load? It never takes this long to load. I played this like, I don't know, countless times. There we go. All right. I think my settings are still the same. Yeah, it seems like it. Okay, so let me just and it's running slowly. Why is it running slowly? That's probably just this room, but that's weird. My game is acting completely different than it used to. Oh, I never noticed how scary this cherub looks. Yeah. Aren't cherubs supposed to look cute and adorable? They're just kind of scary looking. Oh, right, because we're on B deck, because that's where the first class entrance is. Okay. So, potato rooms are in the bow. Oh, that place. Oh, okay. I go to that, I feel like, almost every live stream. I want to do something different this time, but I don't know necessarily what. I feel like the last live stream we did, I went all over the ship, pretty much to every place you can go. I like this room. Old Shipping Line says, "How are you, sir? I am doing great. How about you?" Potato storage is located in E deck on the port side, front the second class forward staircase. The room is not accessible. Yeah, I think people are confusing the potato room because there's in this game there's a storage space for crew's food, and they have like a bunch of sacks of potatoes and stuff in there, and it's located on the very bow of the ship and in the crew areas. And so I think people think that's the potato room, but yeah, the potato room you described, Arnaud, is the one that I know of, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's available in this game. This is one of the private promenades, and then we go into the cabin, and this is one of my favorite rooms on the ship, just because of the wood paneling. I just love it so much. Hey Jeffrey, yeah, happy Saturday. 2026 will indeed mark the 90th anniversary of Queen Mary's maiden voyage. Last year marked the 90th anniversary since her launch. Yep, indeed. And this year is something significant, but I don't remember what it was for the Queen Mary. Something significant. I can't multitask, so when I need to think of, you know, navigating this game and then thinking of special events at the same time, I just can't do it. I can barely walk and talk at the same time, honestly. Another amazing room on the ship. And what I like about this room in particular is this table in the center here. Oh man, I'd love to have that table. Can I crouch? Let's see. Yeah, there we go. You can kind of see the legs of the table and stuff. Actually, I like this carpet pattern too. Can I go over this way? Oh, I think I have to go around the stairs. Or not, the chair, I mean. I don't know why I said stairs. So, yeah, if anybody's joining for the first time, which it doesn't seem like it. It seems like there's only 7 people here. Man, YouTube is really, really trying to make me quit YouTube. I'm not kidding. YouTube is, like, been horrible lately. It hasn't been notifying anybody of my videos, and it's essentially been blacklisting me from YouTube. I don't know what's going on, but it just doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I only have 7 people here today, which is really odd for one of these streams. There's usually like 50, 60 people at once watching. By the end of the stream, there would have been like 500 people that watched. But Wild Smiley says 24 people are watching. Oh, okay. My thing says there's 7. Well, at least there's 24 people. At least it's somebody. Makes it feel like I definitely have an audience at least, and it's not just me rambling on and on to a handful of people. I like the marquetry panels in this one too. I like these geometric shapes. That's why I'm such a fan of Art Deco, is because the geometric shapes. But I like these neoclassical styles on Titanic as well. I don't know that I would want my own home decorated in this fashion. It's a bit too much, but I definitely would want my home to be decorated like the Queen Mary. But as I was saying, for those of you who are still new here and you're kind of just tuning in, I'm not a Titanic expert by any means. I know a lot about it, I think, but even then, I think there are definitely a lot of people in my audience who could teach me a thing or two about Titanic, honestly. So if I get something wrong, then that's why. I'm just kind of a fan of Titanic, but not a super fan. I would say like my favorite ship is the Queen Mary. I get asked that on every live stream. What's your favorite ship? I would say the Queen Mary. But yeah, this is Cafe Parisien. Cat says those AI channels are taking over. Oh, they certainly are. Man, I feel like I need to sneeze. Yeah, definitely. I think it's springtime where I am, so there's a lot of pollen and stuff in the air. And I only just started feeling it today because I went outside today for an extended walk, and so now it's like, now my nose is starting to react. It's a delayed response because I've been home for the last 15 minutes. But now my nose is like, And this is probably one of my favorite restaurants on Titanic, actually. I know they have like the regular dining saloons and stuff, But this one I think is the most beautiful. This is called the a la carte restaurant. And in case I haven't explained it enough before, which I'm sure I explain it every single time I come in here, but what was kind of revolutionary about this is that there weren't too many a la carte restaurants at sea. I mean, I think Olympic was probably the first ocean liner, or at least transatlantic ocean liner or something, that had an a la carte restaurant. Maybe that was Titanic. See, I don't know too much, but I do know that they were not common, these a la carte restaurants at sea. And that what makes them different from the main dining saloon is the main dining saloon, they have this whole menu that you go through. Each and every course of the menu is decided for you. Well, actually, you decide what you want in that course. But what I mean is that you have a several course meal that you have to get through. And with the a la carte restaurant, you don't have to do that. You just order a single plate. I mean, if you think about it, most restaurants today are considered a la carte because you just walk in and you're like, oh, I just want that dish and I just want that side salad with it. And that's kind of how they work. But with these classic restaurants, they have full course meals, sometimes 5 to 9 courses. I've heard of a 12-course meal before. But yeah, the more courses there are in a meal, the smaller the portions are. Let me get to some comments. Man, my nose is just going crazy. I'm gonna have to take one of those allergy pills. Jeffrey Charles, did you see one of the new 3D images they got of Titanic? There's a documentary on Disney Plus about it. I need to watch. Yeah, I would need to watch that too. I've seen some things in the news about a new scan of Titanic, but I didn't know if that was anything significant because, I mean, I feel like they just scanned it not too long ago, and everybody was all agog over that. So I'm like, well, maybe this is the same scan, but these headlines are trying to recapture, attention because the original headlines are now old. So I wasn't sure if that was a new scan, but it sounds like it is. I'm reading a comment here that Arnaud says the windows behind the shelf in the restaurant get to the turbine casing. Really? I'm trying to think in my... I think you mean one of the D-Deck restaurants. Because I just came from the a la carte restaurant, and that's too high up, I think. But I mean, unless you're talking about the engine room shaft, there's a shaft that ventilates the engine room, and maybe that's what you mean is the shaft itself. But yeah, I wish there was a game like this for the Queen Mary. Honestly, I know there's Minecraft stuff, and somebody's made stuff on Roblox and stuff like that, but I wish there was something like this for the Queen Mary where you can walk around the ship as she looked in the 1930s. I'd love that. I'd promote the heck out of that. I'd use all my YouTuber influence to promote something like that. So if one of you guys is super creative and decides to make something like this but for Queen Mary in 1936, well, you got my thumbs up. So now we're going to go out here to... What I love most about this game is these outdoor areas, because they look so realistic, more so than the indoor areas. The indoor areas look amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. They look absolutely phenomenal. But this out here looks photorealistic. I mean, it's almost like I'm standing right there on the outer decks of the ship. It's really crazy. And then to be able to look over and see the stern and see the docking bridge, and it's just fantastic. Just reading a comment here. Titanic had only 3 blades on the center propeller, says Mark. Yeah, I've heard that. The right of the gallery entrance. What? Galley entrance. Oh. 5 windows, but I don't know. I can't go count. I don't know where though. Okay. Stormworks would be the closest thing to that, says Robin. Hey, 5 Caps Films. That's okay if you can't stay. This is just, you know, I do this every 2 months or so. I just kind of wander around here, so I don't expect people to stick around if they've already seen it, you know. Well, especially because people are busy, so it's, and for at least in my part of the world, it's a Saturday, so so I'm sure people have a lot of stuff that they want to do on a weekend. Man, look at this view. What's great about this ocean view is the patterns don't repeat very obviously. So there's sometimes where you see an ocean in a game and the wave patterns are so repetitive that you can notice a pattern in the ocean, but I can't actually notice a pattern very well in this ocean. So, I mean, do I? Do I see it? I don't see a pattern. That's actually really crazy. I don't know how they did that. So, you know, I like these well, not that window, but these windows, which have these arches on top, because it really classes up this area. I mean, I don't know, maybe that sounds stupid, but you know, there's something about seeing all the deck chairs and then seeing these windows in particular. And even though you're in this big steel enclosed space with hardly any decoration whatsoever, I mean, that does decorate it, and it does look nice. Yeah. Plus, this is a really wide open, what do you call it? Promenade. Don't know why I can't think. I think my brain is still fuzzy from that walk over here. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, this is really neat to see the bow of the ship. And there's the crow's nest, or I guess in British terms they call it the lookout, or something like that. There's a British terminology, like British nautical terminology, and then there's American nautical terminology, and sometimes they get mixed up. And I try to use the British nautical terminology when I'm examining a British ship, but it's difficult. So, yeah, let's try to get back into this ship somewheres. There's got to be a door here. Even after all this time, I'm still kind of not fully sure how to get around. There we go. It's just letting this load in. Super laggy. My goodness. Yeah, I think what I'd like to do is eventually when I have more money, I'd like to upgrade my graphics card. My graphics card should be able to handle this no problem, but obviously there is an issue because otherwise it wouldn't be this laggy. You know, it's crazy. Like, I spend top dollar on technology. This is what I hate about computers. I do not like computers. I do not like modern technology. Is I spend all this money to upgrade and, you know, and make the right choices on technology and product types and stuff like that. And in the end, I just need to keep on upgrading, no matter what I do. You think you get ahead of it by upgrading to the most fanciest, most amazing computer. And, you know, I built this computer out of part. I bought all the parts separately. I knew what parts I needed, and I bought it all separately and put it all together. And that was 2 years or 3 years ago. And now it's already time, practically, to start upgrading again. Unbelievable. It's just like the worst kind of consumerism. So we are in the first class main lounge. Another one of my favorite spaces on Titanic because of how beautiful it is. I mean, the woodwork and the plasterwork. My goodness. And what's crazy is, you know, these are hand-carved wood decorations. You know, you don't... These aren't like plaster or plastic or something that is injected into a mold. Somebody had to recreate this shape several times over the entire room. They had to recreate it over and over and over again. And so there's a good possibility that no two of these are ever quite the same because they're hand carved. So there's probably, you know, certain carvings and defects into it that make it different from the next one. So isn't that crazy to think about? In today's day and age, when you have a repetitive decoration like that, you would manufacture it so it's exactly the same over and over again. But you know, even today, if they try to do something like that, they'd probably have a computer go and carve that out of wood itself. They have special milling machines or whatever that can carve into the wood and create these same designs, but do it to a computer specified design, so every piece looks exactly the same. The only factor would be the wood. The wood might make it look different. I'm just reading this comment. Actually, I think I need to go back this way because we were already there at the aft end of the ship. We got to keep going forward. Sometimes I lose my way. I become a wayward soul. And this is the reading and writing room for first class. You know, it doesn't look bad, but it's not one of my favorite spaces on the ship. It's good looking though. I mean, it serves the, you know, the design purpose. What am I trying to say? The design that they were going for, they achieved it, is what I'm trying to say. But I don't like how, I don't know. It's a little too white, I think. But, I mean, this is what you want in a reading and writing room, though. You want light. You know, these white walls reflect the light very well, brighten it up so you can read and you can write letters and whatnot. So, I mean, that's exactly what you want. You know, and the surfaces are reflective, so it helps to reflect the light even more. I mean, it's designed well. Designed very, very well. Arnaud says, don't forget you can zoom. I know. I try not to, though, because this... so this view that we're looking at looks like normal eye view. You know, nothing is overly zoomed in or overly zoomed out. It looks normal. But when you change that and you zoom in or you zoom out, which I'm not going to do, you can't return to this specifically. For some reason, the scroll wheel just doesn't
allow me to return to this view. And then I end up spending a bunch of extra time trying to return to this specific view, because otherwise it'll bother the heck out of me. And yeah, so that's why I don't like to zoom in and zoom out. So here are the lifts. So you can see, actually, yeah, all three are here. So we're looking down at the top of the lifts, and you will notice that there are 4 cutouts on the lift car. And you can see it over here too. 4 cutouts. That allows, because, you know, when the car goes up and down through the lift shaft, it compresses air as it goes up, and then it compresses air as it goes down, because, you know, but that air escapes out of these grated openings, because obviously these are grates. The air escapes out of that, but what it also does is it helps ventilate the elevator car itself. So the air can go through those big openings, and as it goes up, it pushes the air into the car and helps, not cool it, but just ventilate it, you know. So it's interesting effect there, because they didn't, you know, today a lot of elevators have air conditioning built into them, so that way, you know, the elevator car is always ventilated, because now today elevator cars are almost completely sealed. You know, they're made of either solid steel or solid glass, and air doesn't come in and out very easily. But today they're ventilated really well. But back then they had to rely on the movement of the elevator car itself for proper ventilation. Oh, I got a super thanks from Hello Yes Happy Good. Thank you so much. Lucy says, we are visiting Cobwebs, an ocean liner shop that specializes in White Star, Cunard, and the owner is retiring in August this year after 50 years in the ocean liner artifacts business. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I own a few ocean liner memorabilia. I'd like to own more. But it's as they say, collecting is for people with money. I don't think people actually say that, but they should. They should say that. Okay, so let's go down a level. Well, actually, let's go down 2 levels. I think we were just on this level. Am I right? Yeah. Yeah, that was the private promenade over there. So let's go down another level to, I believe this is C deck. And then there's the purser's desk. We can actually go inside the purser's desk. I don't think I do that very often, so might as well. What I like is you can see kind of the dust or the atmosphere of the room kind of moving up. In fact, that might even be heat from the radiator. No, I don't know. But it looks nice. You know, when you're sitting in a room with rays of sunlight coming through, you can see dust particles and things moving. You know, the atmosphere of the room is moving. 5 Caps Films says, Alex, on your Queen Mary website, you should add ways to get to the Queen Mary from around the city, like the bus or the metro line. I really don't. I mean, I don't even know how to do that myself. Like, I don't know how to get to the Queen Mary from other parts of the city myself. But also, my website is not about current Queen Mary, like notices, you know, like it's not a bulletin board for the current ship that, you know, they, you know, if anything, the actual hotel should have that information. But my website is not meant to be for that. It's meant to be for the engineering and design and history of the ship. You know, it's meant for stuff of the past. And although I do have a page dedicated to the current condition of the ship, but it's not meant for like current events or current like, you know, visiting information, that kind of thing. And one of the reasons why I don't want to do that is because it would require me keeping up with it, honestly. Back when my channel only focused on Disneyland history, I had people constantly asking me, oh, if I upgrade to this and that, you know, well, you know, how much will that cost and what will this be? People assumed I knew all the latest information because I'm a Disney historian, I guess. So they were like, oh, so he must know all the ticket prices and how to get around Anaheim and, you know, all that stuff. And I'm like, I in order for me to know that, I'd have to keep up with it. And I don't keep up with it, you know. Aside from making stuff on YouTube, I'm rarely even online and stuff like that. So, but yeah. Here's one of the first class cabins. Sheila says, remember to click the like button. Yes, everybody, remember to click the like button. It really does help me out. Aaron says, I would collect more, but I rent my house, so there's that. Yeah, same here. I rent my apartment, and if I fill it full of stuff that I'll just have to move later on. That's what I think, too, is like, you know, I try not to overfill my house with stuff because I'm always worried that someday I'll just have to like move again and then I have to move all that stuff. But I think at this point though, I'm past that because I have too much stuff now. I used to travel lightly. I used to, you know, if I needed to move or something, it could easily be packed into like a small van or something. But ever since I got this apartment, I've had a lot of stuff. Lots of furniture and things. So we are in the engineers... No, the... I'm sorry. The third-party dining room. So third-party employees. So people like the Marconi wireless people and stuff like that. And this is the dining room for the maids and valets or valets. You can say it both ways. I've done my research. You can say it both ways. Sorry, I did a video where I talked about the valets because I was using the British pronunciation. And man, people got on my back about that. And it's like, I'm like, okay, well, you know, I did my research. I know you can say valet. Man, people, they can be vicious. Over a word, right? Okay, so let's see here. Five Caps Film says, if you go back to B-Deck, you can go to the Satinwood Suite. I was actually already there earlier at the beginning of the stream. Jeffrey says, speaking of collecting, there's an auction in LA that is auctioning furniture from the original Frasier set, like the sofa. What? Oh man, I wish I was rich. I would buy something from the Frasier set. It's my favorite. Like, you know how people say that you have your comfort show, you know, something you fall asleep to? For me, that's the original Frasier. I have that on every single night. I don't think I could sleep comfortably without that show being on, honestly. It's so comforting. And you can imagine when I ended up moving up here to Portland and being so close to Seattle and stuff, and I felt so at home. Even though the show was actually filmed like not in Seattle most of the time, but you know, there was still a familiarity there. All right, let's go to the swimming pool. Well, I guess on our way down the swimming pool, we can go to the dining room. But I think my computer will just crash at that point. Because if it's laggy in these hallways, it'll be laggy down in the thing, the dining room area. And like I said, I don't know why my computer is being laggy today. Normally it handles this game just fine. Oh, that was spooky. I thought I saw someone standing way over there. That's the first time I've seen someone standing over there, too. Usually I see it, you know, a standing person in a different part of the ship. It's a part of it's a painting that when you're not focusing on it, it looks like a person. Let's see. Lucy says, this is the best channel for Demo 401 live explorations. It was actually a Demo 401 video that helped me find the channel. Oh, nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, I try to, well, one of the things I do a bit differently than other people that explore Demo 401 is I try not to do, like, a whole lot of this, you know? Like, there's people that just, you know, and they move the camera so much. And it makes you so, like, seasick. I don't know, like, the word for it, like, motion sick, I guess, but I know I do. I get motion sick watching other people's videos. And so what I do on this a lot is if I move, I always take a moment to pause and just, you know, stay put. So that way, you know, your brain can kind of reorient itself. Because I know that helps me a lot too, especially when I'm playing the game, I can get motion sick. And so, so being able to take a moment to pause. And the other thing I do too is I slow down. There's a setting for the mouse. So when you move the mouse to kind of turn, there's a setting to slow it down. So that way the mouse isn't so quick and reactive. And I have that setting up on full. So that way people don't get super sick watching this. But I mean, I wouldn't doubt if some people still felt sick nevertheless. Because, you know, it's weird to see a landscape moving and you're not the one moving the landscape, you know what I mean? So like you're not the one changing perspective, it's somebody else's camera that's doing that. So sometimes that can make people a bit motion sick. Arnaud says, the windows are extremely detailed. Isn't that the reason for the lag? I mean, it could be the reason for the lag, but it isn't the reason why the lag is suddenly happening today of all times. Like I said, normally my computer handles this game perfectly fine. I've played this game probably 100 times by now, and this is the first time that it's been laggy. So, I mean, aside from the dining room, I think the dining room, my game's always laggy in the dining room. But, yeah, this is the first time it's been laggy just as is. So it is a bit surprising. So here we are at the squash courts. I don't come down here often enough. So this is the first class squash court. And on Titanic, and I'm sure the other Olympic class ships, it was way down here. The funny thing is, on Queen Mary, it's pretty much on the top level of the ship. Or was, I should say. But yeah. And Queen Mary's squash court looked a little nicer than this. You know, a lot of Queen Mary looked nicer than this, but on Queen Mary there was sycamore paneling. So the whole thing was paneled in this very bright sycamore. And then, and even that was like marquetry style. And then the ceiling, there's no pictures of it, but on Queen Mary's, the ceiling had this huge skylight, right? And the skylight had this glass art piece. It was glass, and it was several different glass rings, like onion rings. You know, they start out big, and then each ring is smaller and smaller and smaller till it gets to the center. And what that was designed to do was to take what little daylight came through the skylight and then it reflected it evenly across the room. It distributed the sunlight evenly across the room. I would have loved to see a picture of that or something. It doesn't exist as far as I know. I have pictures of the squash court, but they don't include that glass art piece in the middle. But I would have loved to see that. All right, so we can go through this little doorway here to get to the mail holds. Oh, wow, that was fast. Okay. I was going to look at my phone and see if I can answer a question or two, but we loaded in so quickly. All right, so this is one of the mail sorting rooms. I think there was more than just this one for mail sorting. Or maybe this was just the only one. I don't know. But this is a mail sorting room. And I'll just point the camera at this for a second while I check my phone for questions or comments. Let's see. Five Cats Film says, Alex, something I love about your channel is that your streams and videos are so rewatchable. That's really only isolated to your channel and one other channel for me. Really? I didn't think about that. I've actually never thought about the rewatchability of my live streams. I assumed that my live streams were disposable like anybody else's, you know, like if you miss it, you know, it's pretty much not suitable for rewatching, but I never really thought about that. I suppose there are some live streams I've done where I really felt like, okay, I could rewatch this over and over again or something. Or even if I missed it, it would be worth rewatching. But that's nice to know that my live streams are rewatchable, because makes me feel a little bit less like I'm creating a disposable content, you know. We can see that there's a lot of these Olympic Titanic postcards. Yeah, they're everywhere. And speaking of postcards, if you love Queen Mary and Art Deco stuff, I do have an online merchandise store. We just opened it. It's on Printful, and so it's called Art Decorium, and you can find it on the Printful website, and as well as the fact that there is a link in the description of this live stream. We have artwork of RMS Queen Mary and RMS Queen Elizabeth as postcards and stuff. We also have some posters, and we have kind of a cool coffee mug with some of the same artwork on it, as well as we have Art Deco Queen Mary inspired stuff like placemats, napkins, and drink coasters. So we plan to sell a lot more, like a bigger variety than just that stuff. But that's what we're starting out with for now. But yeah, we've already got our first customer had purchased some postcards and stuff, and that's on the way to the customer. So I'm hoping that that they like it, that they enjoy it. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, the link to the merch is in the description below, and that's on printful.com at Art Decorium. Some really cool postcards. I'm telling you guys, they're really cool postcards. And now we are in part of the cargo holds, but the baggage holds. There's a lot more than this, but this is what the game creators were able to accomplish with the limited stuff that they had. But we can go down yet another level to see even more of the baggage holds. And of course the cargo netting and stuff to hold it all down. You know, it's interesting to think, you know, you would think that people would want to keep their luggage and stuff with them, right? That's your first idea. I mean, people on cruise ships, for instance, keep their luggage with them, but you have to remember that this was an ocean liner. So a lot of people's luggage and stuff, this is their earthly belongings, everything that they own, because a lot of these people, they're never coming back on an ocean liner. They're moving to the United States, you know. So this is people's lives in these luggage. Wow, I just felt like a huge sense of, what's the word? I don't know. I was talking about how people's lives are packed up in these luggages, and I realized, you know, a lot of the luggage sank with the ship. So people's lives, their memories, everything, you know, that established who they were and what they loved and what was important to them was lost to the sea. You know, you think, even in my apartment, you know, if you know, heaven forbid something were to happen to me, you know, my stuff would still be in my apartment. People would see the evidence of my life and who I was and where I lived, and, you know, but this luggage here was filled with all of these people's lives, and the majority of it never came back to the surface. That's really sad. That's really, really sad. You know, not to get too philosophical about things, but this game, I remember when I first heard, I think it was like 10 years ago or something like that, that they were talking about making this game. And I thought, you know, that sounds a bit insensitive, because back then they were talking about, oh, we're going to make a sinking simulator. That's what it was originally. They said they were going to make a sinking simulator. And I remember thinking, well, that sounds very inconsiderate, very not cool, because, you know, people died on this ship, you know, and it's not a game. These people were literally, you know, struggling for their lives, and to play a game where you simulate that struggle for the sake of, I don't know, for the sake of points or whatever, or just to see if you can escape, it doesn't seem right, you know. So originally I was against this game, but then over the years they kind of changed it from, oh, we're going, you know, we're doing a sinking simulator, to doing something a bit different, where they were like, we're going to create a museum, a virtual museum of the ship. And that's still kind of their goal. They're going to make a virtual museum of the ship. I think they still are going to make a version sometime way in the future that can sink, which I personally am not okay with. But the version that will be a museum where you can learn about Titanic and the people who you know, had lost their lives on it, I think that's a cool idea. And so the point I'm trying to make is, I remember there was a naysayer who was talking to me about the Queen Mary, and they said, you know, they should just sink that ship. It's not worth it to keep it or anything like that. And I said, it is worth it. You know, Queen Mary is worth keeping, because you can learn so much about the ship's history and the importance of it. You know, you can understand the Queen Mary by visiting it. You know, and this person was like, no, you don't need that. Just, you know, document what's there and put it on video, and, you know, make however many documentaries you want. That's fine. But the thing is that there are certain things that you can't fully grasp until you see it with your own eyes. And that luggage I was just talking about reminded me of that. Because this game does that. You know, Titanic, we can't visit it unless, you know, well, I mean, I don't. No, let's not get into that. We can't visit Titanic, right? You know, the average person, especially not me, it's gone. And even if you could go down there, like James Cameron does, what you see is not this. This is gone. This has rotted away a long time ago. So this game allows you to experience Titanic like you pretty much can't anywhere else. And even being able to see in virtual reality that luggage and to suddenly feel the emotion that people's lives, the evidence that normally is left behind of someone's existence is at the bottom of the ocean, and it's been down there for over 100 years. That's a powerful emotion that I don't think you would ever really think about unless you saw something like this, where you saw the luggage right in front of you, you know, or even the craftsmanship on this wood railing. You see a photograph of it and you're like, oh, that's pretty, that's beautiful. But when you're there on the Queen Mary, for instance, and you see the different art pieces and hand carved stuff and the woodwork, the marquetry panels and everything, when you see that and you realize there were craftsmen, there were people who loved what they did and put all their skill and all their effort into building this ship, you know, and you can see it and touch it. Suddenly it becomes so much more real. That's why I think it is important to preserve ships like the Queen Mary. And even though I'm not particularly a fan of SS United States, I do recognize the importance of keeping the SS United States. The viability of keeping it is another thing altogether. At a certain point, the things that you keep do have to be able to make money. But at least I think that, you know, if someone can afford to keep the SS United States and afford to restore a lot of its interiors, I think it is necessary. I think it is important to do so. And for the Queen Mary, gosh, this room is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, look at this. I mean, I've seen this room 100 times, but every time I walk in here, I'm like, this is just fantastic. But even for the Queen Mary, it is extremely important to keep the ship around. I mean, the ship wasn't... People think, oh, the best thing that she did was she carried some troops during World War II. That is such an understatement. You know, to say that she carried troops is, you know, is like saying, oh, Titanic, oh, it was, you know, it was a new ship. Okay, but Titanic was a very important ship in terms of its artistic and monetary value. You know, the amount of craftsmanship and artwork and beauty and decoration, you know, as well as the fact that the story of Titanic now is able to teach people things, and, you know, and we can learn about the human condition through the stories that come from Titanic. You know, the same thing can be said for Queen Mary. Yeah, she transported troops during World War II, and that's probably the most significant thing she did, but that story behind her transporting troops is so much more than what people think it is. I mean, even one of the fun facts that not many people know about Queen Mary during World War II is that she had carried troops from Scotland. They weren't necessarily Scottish. They could have been American and from the UK as well. But she carried troops down to the Mediterranean, just miles from El Alamein, and that sudden influx of, I believe it was 15,000 No, actually, it was more like 10 or 11,000. It was 10 or 11,000 troops were delivered to the coast of Egypt, in order to help the Allies win the first battle at El Alamein. Not many people know that. You read history books and you go, oh, yes, the history books say that there was a sudden influx of Allied troops to help the British Eighth Army push away Rommel's forces. And that's what won the first battle at El Alamein. But what they don't tell you is it was the Queen Mary that delivered all those troops. That was the Queen Mary. She delivered 11,000 troops in one swift voyage, just dropped them all off. And she was carrying supplies too for the Allies. So she had all that in her cargo holds. They talk about in all these history books, all the influx of troops and supplies to El Alamein that won them the first battle, but nobody mentions that it was the Queen Mary that did that. No other ship. It was the Queen Mary. That's who it was. And so there's a photograph that exists of the troops landing along the banks of a beach in the Mediterranean. It's not necessarily El Alamein. It's a little bit further west than El Alamein, but you can see some of Queen Mary's lifeboats among the boats that landed on that beach to drop off the troops. There were other like boats, I think, that came out from the coast to help take the troops off the ship and deliver them to the coast. But some of those boats were Queen Mary's lifeboats. So it's unbelievable. And that's one of those fun facts that I love that nobody knows, nobody talks about. And so it's things like that where I'm like, you couldn't appreciate it unless you saw the ship for yourself. It's one thing to know a fun fact. It's another thing entirely to see it in front of your face and be like, history was made here. So yeah, that's my little rant. Let's see here. Mark says history to kids is very boring, sadly. I don't believe that. My channel has taught me a lot of things, and one of those things is not to be as skeptical as I was about the younger generations in history. I can't tell you how many children watch this channel for the content about history. I mean that's literally all this channel does, is it talks about history. They love this channel. There's a lot of kids that watch. I think what it is, if you can imagine when you were a teenager, for instance, there's a good possibility that you probably didn't like history as much back then. There's a good possibility that you probably didn't like it at all back then. But somewhere along the lines, you found something that interested you so much in history that suddenly it became interesting. And I think what it is these kids, they're taught history in a classroom, and it's a very boring thing. The teacher probably isn't into it either, but they're told, this is what you have to teach the kids. So they drone on and on with their boring voice going, and at this time, blah, 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 and they're not enthusiastic about it. So the kids aren't enthusiastic about it. And the kids, over time come to believe that history is not interesting. Have I been down here before? What in the world? Anyways, they learn over time that history is not interesting. And, I think I have been down here, but it's been so long, I actually forgot that this existed. No way. Is this the potato room? No way. I think this is dirty linens. Let me see. There might be a thing above the doorway. I think this is just dirty. Let me go up here. It just says stairs to F deck. I'm pretty sure these aren't sacks of potatoes. I'm pretty sure these are dirty linens. Sorry, I don't mean to move this crazy, but I was just trying to figure out what these were. I'm so sure that they are dirty linens, but there's no label or anything. Okay, so, but yes, I think if you can make if you can make history interesting, the kids will be interested. And I think that is kind of proven on my channel. You know, the way I talk about history, I mean, some people say like, oh, it's, you know, it's infectious the way you talk about it, you know, because, you know, one person even said, one time I talked about the history of Disneyland's waterways, you know, the different natural waterways that are in the park. And this person commented saying, somehow, Alex, you managed to make water sound interesting. And it's because, you know, I think if you're hearing history from someone who loves it, you know, I think then it inspires people to want to know more. And so, yeah, I think that's what it is. All it takes is someone who's interested in history to talk to children about history and get them interested in it. So, here's one of the cargo hatches. You know, so these cargo hatches, they have these removable floors, and even these steel beams, they're removable, and they slide them into place. But anyway, they remove them to put all the cargo down below, and as each area fills up, they can put these boards over it to put even more cargo and luggage, and that actually increases the capacity for cargo and luggage. And Queen Mary had a similar thing. They could seal up each level of the hatch to create more space for holding cargo and luggage. Oh yeah, you can see some of the boards are removed here. I don't know why I didn't even immediately look at this, but yeah, you can see some of the boards here are removed for that very purpose. Let me check my... Wild Smiley about your about the sinking ship comment. Yeah, that's true. That's one of the things I think that I was talking to historian Bill Sauter about Titanic, you know, and we were talking about how Titanic is way more popular than Queen Mary. But what a lot of people don't know is in 1967, when Queen Mary retired, she was actually the most well-known ship in the world at that time. And that's because everybody knew about her trooping duty and, you know, her World War II voyages and all that. But also, she had sailed around the world to so many different ports and things that there were people, you know, who remembered the Queen Mary pulling into the harbor as a kid, and even their fathers and their mothers, you know, they remember seeing the Queen Mary pulling into their harbor as a kid, whether it was during World War II or even during the final voyage, what they call the last great cruise, back in 1967. So the Queen Mary had the opportunity to kind of introduce herself to people all over the world. And so she was the most famous, the most well-known ship in the entire planet in 1967. But that changed over the next 50 years as Queen Mary became kind of forgotten over time. And Titanic came back into the limelight because of James Cameron's movie. His movie really, you know, it set the gold standard, honestly, for Titanic stuff, you know. Even to this day, with whatever inaccuracies that have been discovered since the movie, it's still considered a highly accurate historical interpretation of the Titanic disaster. But my point is that I was talking to Bill about why the Titanic became much more famous than Queen Mary. I mean, you would think it'd be the opposite. Titanic is gone, you know, but it's because Titanic sank. You know, people like disaster stories. It's, you know, I mean, for one thing, you could say people can empathize with it, and they you know, they feel bad for the people who died and all that. You can empathize with it. But then on the other hand, there's people who just love disasters. They love to hear a good, you know, oh, the ship broke apart and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting to them. And this is the engineers' mess hall. Engineer officers, I think it is actually. Engineer officers. But I was telling him that, you know, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they had said something which I thought was really just the perfect thing to say about Queen Mary. Somebody said, you know, the worst thing to happen to the Queen Mary was that she never sank. And I think that rang so true. They don't mean that the Queen Mary should sink. What they mean is that the reason why Queen Mary has lost her popularity over the years is because no major disasters happened on the ship. She's been such a safe and reliable ship, you know, for so long that, you know, you can't tell a disaster story about her. You know, it's really difficult. Even making a movie about the Queen Mary, I mean, James Cameron probably would never do that because, you know, there's no major event, I think, that could quite tug at your heartstrings the same way that Titanic's disaster could. And so, at best, you could tell, you know, a story of friendship and romance and stuff on Queen Mary, but then how do you top it? How do you end it, you know? So, that's one of those things where, you know, you have to rely on people finding the Queen Mary interesting, and that's difficult to do. People love a disaster story. So, you know, and as you were saying about people who love disaster stories, I mean, it's true. I mean, there are some people who I think are not really Titanic fans. They're disaster fans. They're like, oh, the only reason why they love Titanic, I mean, not everybody, I'm just saying certain people, they love Titanic so much because it was in a disaster, because all these, you know, crazy things were going on as the ship broke apart and sank, you know, and it's kind of sad when you think about it. It's like that's all this ship meant to them is the disaster. So, yeah. I remember, too, when that submersible, the Titan, had, you know, imploded and sank, there were a lot of YouTubers. Oh, my goodness. Lots of YouTubers were talking about it on their channels. I mean, it was just a countless amount of them were talking about it on their channels. And some people were asking me, they're like, oh, Alex, do you want to do a live stream or something and, you know, and talk about it and talk about the disaster? And I said, I'm like, no, that's not what I do. You know, I don't like to make money off of a tragedy, you know, in the sense that, you know, this thing just happened. You know, it was still fresh, and, you know, and I don't want to draw attention to my channel during such a sad time, you know. And so I didn't think it was right. All these YouTubers and stuff suddenly just jumped at the opportunity to make tons and tons of content, even if they had to, even if they, you know, even before we knew the full story, you know, while the story was still breaking across the world, we didn't know the full story, and people were still going on YouTube and speculating. Be like, oh, this must have happened and that must have happened and blah, blah. It's one thing for an expert to do that, okay? It's one thing for like the news to call up an expert and be like, what do you think happened? And the expert gives their opinion. That's different. But for like a random YouTuber who's like, you know, who normally just, you know, does fun things on their channel and stuff like that, suddenly going like, oh yeah, you know, this must have happened and that must have happened, and they're only doing it because they know it'll get them the views. And I'm like, that's not right, you know? That's just not right. And so that's why I didn't do it. And that's why I will never do it. Every time a disaster or something happens that's related to my channel, or, you know, the content I talk about on my channel, whether it's ocean liners or Queen Mary or something, you know, I'm not going to be the first person on YouTube talking about it. You know, if anything, I'll be the last person. But even then, I don't know that I feel comfortable, you know, doing that. Titanic, I think, is different because, you know, it happened over 100 years ago. So talking about it and even showing off this game and stuff, I think, you know, the tactfulness, the sensitivity to the subject allows for such a thing now. But something fresh like the submersible disaster, I don't think, you know, I don't think it's right. But that's just my opinion. Wild Smiley says Queen Mary should be more famous because of triumph, not tragedy. Yeah, I agree. Steven says, I feel like it doesn't help that American history taught in our schools is so dimensional and one-sided. Yes, that's true. Oh my gosh. You know, as I grew up and I was learning more and more stuff, I was starting to realize like a lot of the history and stuff that I was taught in school was very one-sided and skipped over a lot of important things. I mean, I can't think of anything specific at the moment because it's been so long, but I remember thinking that. I remember thinking, why is this information so incomplete when it's being taught to children? You know? And so, yeah. But I don't want to get too deep into that because everything is politics now. So, especially American education. So, and people come to my channel to get away from it for just a moment. And me too, honestly. I just to have a moment's peace and talk about ocean liners and things that people love, you know. You know what's funny? I just want to say this. I was thinking about this the other day. I had to call up a government agency. I might as well just say it, the IRS. And, you know, I was telling them, like, you know, I'm really having these really bad financial times. And, you know, I'm like, if I could create some kind of payment plan for my taxes, because I do owe on taxes. And so I was like, you know, can I create some kind of payment plan or something? And at first, this lady didn't really have any patience for me. You know, she answered the phone and she was like, you know, but I was like, you know, I really need help, you know. And so she was able to help me. And I thought, you know, this lady is so nice for doing this. And in the end, we ended up having like kind of a nice conversation, and, you know, ended up telling her about my channel and stuff like that, you know. And so I was just like, you know, she didn't have to help me. It's not her requirement to do that, you know. But she did. She took her time and did that. And I think my point is that there's still a lot of kindness out there. There's a lot of kindness, you know, in this world and in this country. And we don't see it because there's so much, what's the word? Like social media, you know, all the unkindness, all the ugliness is put on blast on social media. And it gives you a skewed view of the world. Trust me, it does. It gives you a skewed view of the world. Because when you go out there and you talk to people, you know, you're at the grocery store, or you're, you know, you're I don't know, at the laundromat or something, and you talk to people, and people are so nice and so kind to each other still. It's when they get on the computer and they go online on social media, they start getting real nasty. Because I guess, you can hide behind your profile picture. You don't have to, you can be anonymous, essentially. You can say whatever you want and do whatever you want. But when you're among people in a social convention, you have certain, oh my God. I'm sorry. I thought I saw a person, but it's, it's the knob on that thing. I thought I saw someone looking through that door. I was, was so scared. Oh my gosh. Okay. That was, whew. That was so scary. Okay, but my point is that oh geez, see now that I zoomed in, now that it's all wonky, this POV thing. But my point is that you get this skewed view of the world where people are nasty and nobody cares about each other and nobody, all that kind of stuff. But when you go out there and you're out in real life with people, there are still certain social conventions that are in place, certain, unspoken rules. When you meet someone for the first time and they say something like, I don't know, like, oh, I think, Titanic should have been all red or whatever, the whole thing, all the walls, everything painted red, but they went with white for most of the places, right? And you're going, that's not a very popular opinion. Online, someone might just berate that person, like, how stupid are you for thinking that, the whole ship should be painted red? How dumb. But in person, when you're standing in front of that person who suggests that, you might be a lot more kind and say, oh, well, I disagree, but, to each his own. That's reality. That's who people really are. I know you might think, oh, no, people really are how they are online because they're free to say whatever they want. No. The reality of people is that they think they're talking to a robot when they're online. That's why they're so brave. They say these rude things because they're like, some robot is on here talking to me. They don't fully realize they're talking to a person with emotions, feelings, depth, someone who's been through things in their life, who probably deserves a bit more respect than being berated for loving the color red, right? But when you're in person talking to somebody, you recognize those things instantly. You recognize that there is a certain amount of respect you should treat someone with. You don't necessarily berate them for having such a controversial opinion, and you also recognize that, maybe they're wrong about the color red, but it's not worth it to create such an argument over it. All these different kinds of things. And the very fact that you're trying to be respectful and saying, I disagree, the very fact that you're trying to be tactful tells you who you really are. You're a kind person because you recognize that if you say something so very mean and hurtful about their opinion, that makes you an unkind person in return. So my point is that people are who they really are when they are in person with people. Because you can recognize the humanity, you can recognize the kindness and the respect that everybody deserves. So what people see online is what people act like when they think they're talking to a mindless robot. And true, it's not very nice. And often there's lots of divisive opinions and things. But when you go outside and you talk to people in person, you start to realize that people are still very nice to each other. People still want to help each other. In disasters and things, when there's been a lot of plane crashes and stuff recently, and people step up, they don't ask you, oh, wait, I'm not going to let you out of this plane until you, until you tell me your political opinions. People don't talk like that. They just go, are you okay? Are you hurt? Let's get out of this plane and get to safety, that kind of thing, So, you know, that's who we are in reality. And that's one of those things I think, well, I don't want to bring Walt Disney into this. It sounds so random, but you know, he's one of the people that I think are you know, very influential in my life among other people. You know, people like Julia Child and just a number of other people that have been great influences in my life. But Walt Disney was one of those people who recognized that that people were a lot better when they were put in situations together. They showed their true humanity. One of those reasons, it's a good story. Trust me, just sit through this story. So Walt Disney was touring the evangelist Billy Graham through Disneyland. He was giving him a private guided tour through the park, and Walt Disney was so proud to show off Disneyland to Billy Graham. And at the very end of the tour, Walt turned to Billy and said, "So, what do you think?" And Billy just kind of nodded, and he goes, "Oh, you know, I think it's a wonderful fantasy." And that didn't sit well with Walt. He was very perplexed and almost insulted by that compliment. Walt said, "Billy, look around you. Look at all the people from all races, all countries, all different languages, all having fun together." He says, "This is reality. This is who people are." He says, "The fantasy is out there, outside the park gates, where people are angry and ugly to each other. It's not real." And that's one of my favorite stories about Walt Disney, because he could recognize that in people. When you're put in a situation where you're not fighting with each other over resources, over politics, over various different things, people are kind to each other. They can be, at least. You know. So yeah, that's kind of my little rant about kindness. That's one of those things that it's very important to me, because especially as a YouTuber, I'm lumped in with a lot of YouTubers. You know, YouTubers are considered to be, you know, fake people who don't care about anybody and only care about the clicks and all that kind of stuff. And I've been accused of that plenty of times. And yeah, sometimes it can look like that, because I am concerned about viewership and all that kind of stuff. This is my business. This is what I do to make money and stuff. So I am concerned about viewership. But I am exactly the person that you see before you. I've lived my whole life believing that one day I will stand before God with, you know, with his judgment, you know, to be brought upon me. I do believe that. And I believe that I will have to answer for every wrongdoing I've done and every good thing I've done. And I want to live my life knowing that I didn't swindle people, that I didn't try to be dishonest, you know, that if I made a mistake, that I tried to make amends for that mistake, you know, and that though I am flawed, I don't use that as an excuse to, you know, to continue to be flawed in the same way each and every time. So I'd like to think that I'm among the people who try to do the right thing each and every day. And that's what I want to be remembered for, you know, honestly. And so, yeah, it's a little personal philosophy for you guys, because I think it can be misconstrued, you know. Sometimes you hear things about these YouTubers and stuff, and you know, there's lots of rumors and stuff going around, and you start to wonder about these people that you put so much trust in. You know, you watch their videos, you think they're good people, you put a lot of trust in them, and sometimes, you know, you wish for that trust to be rewarded. You want to know that the person that you're supporting is genuinely a good person. Well, I'll let you decide for me whether I'm a good person or not, but I hope that you know what guides me every single day is that I know ultimately I will have to answer to God for the things that I do. And I hope that every day I live my life doing the right thing. So yeah, that's my little personal philosophy on myself. Man, we get into such deep topics while we're on Titanic, huh? Don't we? My goodness. This ship just makes me talk. What in the world? I'm going to go back up to the sunlight so I can read through some of the comments, because I realize I've been blabbering on and I haven't answered any questions or anything recently. Let me just point the camera up here. Hardly Human says, how comprehensive is the simulation? Can you run the engines / change heading? Does it sync? It's no, you can't make any changes, you can't run the ship or anything. It's really like it's like a static museum. You just kind of walk through it. That's really all you can do. There's nothing moves, nothing changes really. I mean, not moves in the sense that you can't move anything yourself, you know. Yeah. Barry says, the Carpathia, one of the Titanic's rescue ships, was built in my hometown of Wallsend, Newcastle upon Tyne in England. She saved 712 people from the frozen seas. Yes, Carpathia is on my top list of favorite ships. Arnaud says, cargo hold 1 is for merchandises, hold 2 is for motor vehicles, hold 3 is coal bunker, and hold 4 is for food. Hold 5 is refrigerated, and hold 6 is baggage hold. Kat says, I think James Cameron was able to have a glance at the cargo holds in one of his expeditions. I wonder if there was any cargo left. I think most of it probably would have dissolved over the years. Hardly Human says, I heard that back then if they ever offered anyone ice cream, it was because they needed the space to hold space in cold storage to store a dead passenger crew member. That's kind of an overblown truth, and that was really mostly true for the Queen Mary, not necessarily for every ship. So for the Queen Mary, she didn't have a morgue. A lot of ships today have a morgue, like huge cruise ships and things have a small morgue, because people do die on ships for any number of reasons, you know. So most of the time it's a heart attack, honestly. But for Queen Mary, she didn't have a morgue or anything, and in order to keep a body cold for delivery at the next port, they would have to empty out the ice cream room. They have lots of refrigeration, or had lots of refrigeration spaces on Queen Mary, but the ice cream room was the least important because it's ice cream. You know, you don't need it for sustenance as much as vegetables and whatnot. So the ice cream room would be emptied out so they could put the body in there, and yeah, they would offer all the passengers free ice cream. But that wasn't the only time that they offered free ice cream. They still offered it, you know, on special occasions, you know, like if they were celebrating something, I don't know, like an anniversary to, I don't know, for instance, like the birthday of the king or queen or somebody in the royal family, or if they were celebrating the birthday of a president, or, you know, American president, of course, that kind of thing, you know, like they might offer some free ice cream to the passengers. So it wasn't necessarily just because they needed room for a body. But honestly, while there were a lot of deaths on Queen Mary, I think there were 57 different deaths on the ship over the years. And that doesn't include World War II. Nobody knows the numbers for World War II. But what was I saying? But it didn't happen very often, is what I mean, that they would clear out the ice cream room. I think it only happened really a handful of times, because most of the time they were near shore or something, and that kind of thing. I think I'm rambling now, but yeah. Arnaud says if the Titanic was to break in half and the stern were to sink almost vertical, is because the engine room was too heavy. Yeah, that would make sense to me. The engine room would have been very heavy, so it would have sank that way first. But also because that's where all the openings are. You know, when the ship breaks in half, there's a huge area that is now open to the water and is not watertight. So naturally, the water's going to flow in from that area and not from an area like the extreme stern where it's still plated with steel. You know, so I'd say even if there weren't engines in that section that was weighing it down, it still would have been because there was a big opening that just opened up, you know? But yeah. Jeffrey says, would you ever do an audio tour of the Queen Mary so we could have you be our tour guide when we visit? You know, I would love to do that, but actually that's one of those things that would probably create like a cease and desist order from the Queen Mary, because they own the rights to do like tours of the ship, you know. I think if they found out that I created an audio tour and was like, okay, now go this way. It's different when I do like a walkthrough of the ship and I go randomly from place to place, like I did with my my last video tour of the ship. I kind of went randomly place to place and that kind of thing. But if I gave out like an audio tour, I think they would be like, you know, stop doing that. I think that would just be I think I've already kind of overstepped a little bit, and that would just be a step too far. Because at that point, then I'm replacing their tour guides. And I think a lot of people, they've seen my video tour of the Queen Mary and they were like, oh, wow, well, now you told all the information. Now I don't need to go. It's like, actually, I left a ton of information out that the tour guides can give. You know, I purposely did that because I didn't want to give everybody all the information. And a lot of times I would just gloss over the room and just be like, oh, this was the room for this. And then I'd just show it off and whatever. But the tour guides, they would have like more stories to tell when they got in there. So if there's any tour guides watching, I did keep that in mind when I made that video. was that I knew that you guys had a lot more stories to tell in each of those spaces, and I made sure not to tell all the stories. But I did want to create a video tour, and the reason why was not just because it clicks, in case people were wondering. I did that because people have a lot easier access to Queen Mary through the internet, obviously. And I wanted people to want to come to the ship. And if they can't see what they're about to pay for before they buy it, you know, like the ticket, getting on the ship and, you know, paying for reservation, even if they have to fly from a different part of the country, a different part of the world to come see the Queen Mary, if they can't see what they're about to get into, they maybe might think twice about going, you know, because they're like, well, if I can't see what's there, then how do I know it's worth the visit? You know, they might just opt not to do it. So I created that video tour because I was like, I want people to see how much you can see without having to pay extra for tours and things. And that paying for tours will allow you to see even more, you know. So I wanted to show the bright side of the ship and show people what there is to offer on the ship and tell them why it was important. Have I walked in here yet? No, not today. Okay, here we go. I like standing in one of the corners. This is the second class smoking room. So yeah, I created that video because I wanted to entice people to come to the Queen Mary. And in fact, it worked because I have had, oh, man, like, I can't even count, like probably more than 100 people have either emailed me or left me comments over the years saying, wow, now I really want to visit the Queen Mary. I didn't know there was anything like this in Southern California. I didn't know there was, you know, and I have people telling me, oh, I'm going down to Southern California to visit Disneyland with my family, and I didn't even know about the Queen Mary till I saw this, and now I want to see it, you know. So I think it helps encourage people to visit. And, you know, so that's my defense for that video.
But yeah, I think if I did an audio tour, that might be a step too far. Mark, it says, I'm almost at 950 subscribers. Awesome. I hope you reach 1,000 soon. Arnaud says, turbine casing lead to the fourth funnel. Oh, yeah, because they would have to ventilate it out. Is that why? Hello, yes, happy good says, history has been framed oddly and taught all wrong. History is interesting when you think of it as a discovery of the past, not bland consecutive events. Yeah, that's true. I mean, honestly, that's one of the things I love about history is being able to get the sense of rediscovering it. You know, like you're learning about something for the first time, and you know all that. I was already down there. Let's go up to the next level. We have to skip A deck because there's no spaces for second class passengers on A deck. At least not this area of A deck. All right. That's a great view. I love that view. Clicking the mouse wheel should reset the POV. Really? Well, let's try that. And then click. Oh, it does. Wow. I didn't know that. Let's try that again. Boom. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I didn't know that. I thought I was just permanently stuck with whatever, because you know I would like zoom in, and then if I zoomed back out again, I could never find the original POV that I had. It goes either too zoomed in or too zoomed out. See, like there's no in between. So if I'm able to do that and then it goes to the right one, that's incredible. Wow, thank you so much. OC Aviation says, have you been to the bridge yet? Not today. Let's go ahead and do that. Might as well. And then I'll read some comments here. Arnaud says, we don't see the stern and well deck. Oh, but that was probably an older comment from Arnaud because I just went there. So let me... Wild Smiling says, second class lounge is so underrated. On Titanic. Yeah, I think it is. On Titanic, the second class lounge is very underrated. It's a beautiful space. Yeah, these funnels are cool. You know what's funny is these the whistles on the last two funnels were not operable, but they look like they are, which is interesting because you can even see there's a steam pipe. Now, whether that actually supplied steam, I doubt it, because again, from what I learned, the last two whistles were non-operable, but nevertheless, there's a steam pipe there. So I don't know. Does somebody know more information about that than I do? I was told that only the first two whistles on the first two funnels actually operated, but the ones on the other funnels did not. I'd like to know more about that. Okay, so let's continue forward. Aaron says, Alex the philosopher. I'm digging this. Yeah. Let's see here. Wild Smiley's a blasphemer. I'm just kidding. He's like, I don't believe in God. I'm like, blasphemy. No, I'm okay with that, actually. There's a lot of people, I think, that don't believe in it, and I'm cool with that. There was a long time where I didn't believe, but then a lot of really amazing things have happened for me in my life. Things that I don't think could have ever happened before. And so it's kind of made me a true believer. But that's just me. You know, I actually do like the view up here because you can kind of see things you don't normally see, like those grates, for instance, right there at the base of the funnel. Those ventilate the boiler rooms, so the heat from the boiler rooms would come out of those. And oddly enough, these things, this big grate here, that brings air down into the boiler room. So it goes in through this one and then out through those. Kind of cool. Okay, so let's see if I got more comments to respond to. Alex, do you know the Rove pilot Titanic wreck exploration? No, I don't. Ozzy says, you're almost at 80,000 new subscribers. Well done. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very close to 80,000. Yeah, I'm so excited to surpass that number. I've been on YouTube for almost 9 years, and I still haven't surpassed 100,000, which is, you know, it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it, because I've had such popular videos before. I've had videos that reached millions of views, and yet somehow I'm still only at 100,000, or not even 100,000 subscribers. I'm barely at 80,000. So it's been almost a decade. It's been very slow for me to be able to build up subscribership. Wall's End is also where Mauritania was built. Yep, indeed. Kat says, I think a good movie possible about the Queen Mary, if it's focused on bringing back the forgotten era, it's going to be something new and unknown to the modern generation. Yeah, that's true. I think there is still a possibility to make a movie based on the Queen Mary. It would have to be a movie with a very happy ending. So, like, maybe like a movie with a conflict in the middle. You know, Titanic was a movie with the conflict at the end, but Queen Mary's movie might have to be something with the conflict in the middle, and then a very, very good outcome. You know, something like that. I don't know. Hi, Evan. Yeah, Evan, we already saw First Class, so we're kind of we're traveling towards the bridge now. Arnaud says this deck has all those air vents. Yeah, that's true. Oh, I lost the... Oh, here we go. Wild Smiley says, I never got to stay aboard. I visited Queen Mary about a year ago. Yeah, you know, I never thought I was going to be able to stay aboard, too. I think you guys have probably heard I'm going to be visiting the Queen Mary very soon. I don't want to say when because, again, I've got people that probably want to beat me up, and I don't want to run into them. So I'm keeping it kind of secret as to when I'm going to be back on the ship. But I'm going to be in Southern California for about a full week, actually. And I'll be at Queen Mary several of those days. And in fact, a very, very nice viewer of my channel who I met on the Queen Mary last time, his name is Simon, and I met his son Max as well. You know, Simon was like, hey, you know, I'd love to get you your own room on the ship since, you know, it's a really unique experience. And I was just like, you know, normally I'm like, oh, you know, I can't accept that. But I told him, I was like, you know, normally I wouldn't accept such a generous offer. I'm like, but I really want to stay on the Queen Mary, even if it's just for a single night. I said, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to say yes. So
he was really, really nice. He was able to book me a room on the ship, which is something I wouldn't have been able to afford to do on my own. And, and like I said on my last live stream, my friends have been helping me to make this happen as well. My friend Steve, Steve R, I call him Disneyland Steve, because you see him a lot in my Disney content, and you'll see him again in the content coming up after this trip. But, he's going to drive me down there. My friend Jason, he's getting a hotel room down in Anaheim. So when I'm not on the Queen Mary, I'll be at that hotel room. So he's been really nice to do that. My friend Chris is getting me a ticket to Disneyland so I can hang out with all my friends at Disneyland. It'll only be for a day, but I'm totally fine with that because, because I get to see everybody. And then as well as the fact that I'll be at Queen Mary several of those days. And my friend Eric, he's gonna take me to Universal, which I've never been to Universal Studios. And he's a big fan of Universal Studios, so he wants me to go there. So all these friends are coming together to do all this nice stuff for me. And I'm like, this is just unbelievable. I've got these amazing friends who just really want to see me happy, and just do nice stuff. So it's incredibly humbling, That's why I say that, I just feel incredibly lucky, all these great things happen. And, as well as the fact that, completely on an almost different subject is, I just completed a video I've been trying to do for a very long time about the Yarrow project. Now, it's not my video. I don't have the right to show it on my channel. It's for, well, I can't say who, but it's for a future project for the Queen Mary that we're hoping will happen. And you guys know about it already because, it's not something that is necessarily a secret. The Yarrow project's been around for many decades. People have heard about it. But I can't go into detail yet, but I finally completed the video for it, and I'm going to show it to my boss, essentially, and see what he thinks, and if there's any changes that need to be made, and then we'll start talking about presenting it to Queen Mary Management, which is something I'm very excited about. I get to be a part of all this, which is just fantastic. Unbelievable. What is this? Oh, it's a barometer. Okay, cool. I had to read that. I was like, what is this? Nice. They say that Titanic didn't have that board that showed you all the watertight compartment doors. And so that's, for the longest time, I didn't even realize that was missing from this area. So it wasn't until like, I don't know, I saw it on a video or something recently. Or no, was it when I was talking to Bill Sauter? I think he might have told me that. Yeah. And then now I see the board and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's not here. There's no thing to tell you the watertight compartment's being completed. What time is it? Oh, it's almost 3. Okay. Jeez. Oh, did I get oh, wow. Thank you so much, Aaron. Hope this helps your trip. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, that does. And Wild Smiley as well. Now give me details on the Yarrow project. Oh, yeah. You know what? We would like to present it to Queen Mary Management. And if they greenlight it, then we're going to do the best we can to tell the world about it. Because I think it'll be a huge stepping stone for the Queen Mary. It'll be just what the ship needs. The ship needs a major attraction that will bring people. And I think this is it, So I will definitely be talking about it as soon as I'm allowed to. But again, it's not, I don't own any bit of the Yarrow project. I'm really just a volunteer at the moment. So I don't have any rights to reveal information or anything, but I am really excited, and after this live stream, in just a few hours, I have a meeting with my boss to kind of discuss the video, and again, what changes need to be made, what changes or what can stay. I think he's probably gonna like what I've got as it is, but we'll see. It's such a cool video. And the funny thing is that the video is narrated by the Academy Award-winning actor Ernest Borgnine. So you might know him as he played one of the main characters in the Poseidon Adventure, and he also played what's his name, Mermaid Man from SpongeBob. Evil. And he had many different roles. I can't even think of all of them, actually. But he had narrated for this video a very long time ago, and the video was never completed. I think he narrated for it back in 2009, 2010, something like that. And the video was never completed. So here's the top of the lift shaft with the lift motors. But yeah, anyway, so this will be the first time in, almost 2 decades that this video has been completed. And it was very emotional when I finished it. I was like, oh my gosh, And Ernest, he's no longer with us, Ernest Borgnine passed back in 2012. And he never got to see the video himself, and he was so excited for it. I wish he could have seen it. What the heck is that thing? But yeah, so man, I can't wait to see what the guys say about it. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to. Oh, here's that painting that in the corner of my eye, it always looks like there's someone standing there. Yeah. Let me just look at the put a heart by your guys' donations. Thank you. So yeah, Evan, I'll be seeing the Queen Mary very soon, but I can't say exactly when. But it will be soon. Matter of just a couple weeks, basically. But yeah, and hopefully I spot more, viewers, fans, and stuff on the ship like last time. Last time, especially, there was a little boy named Justin who had seen my channel and stuff, and so that was really cool to meet him. So it'd be neat to kind of meet more people, and because I'll be there almost every day of my trip, I'll have more opportunity to meet people. Slow Snail Studio says, "Whoa, when did you talk to Bill Sauter?" It was 2 weeks ago, I think it was. I found out that he's kind of a fan of my channel, and so we just got in this conversation about his work and stuff like that, and yeah, so he's a very busy person. He's I can't say what he's working on, but yeah, he's working on something for somebody you've all heard of. So yeah, but yeah, so we had a great conversation. We talked about Queen Mary. We talked about his history. He used to be a curator on the Queen Mary, and yeah. So I don't know what else to say about the conversation. It was very nice. We talked about a lot of stuff, just about history and ships and Titanic especially. So yeah, that was nice. And I'm sure he'll probably keep, touch with emails and stuff like that in the future. And it's kind of like the same thing with Ken Marshall. You know, I've had several email back and forths with Ken Marshall before. Oddly enough, Ken Marshall was the one that emailed me. He just emailed me one day and, you know, was just talking about the Queen Mary and stuff like that. I think he liked one of my videos that I gave like an update on the condition of the ship. So it prompted him to want to contact me and talk to me about it. So that was kind of cool. So yeah. What are these? I just barely noticed these things. What are these? Yeah, they could be like oh, maybe what you do is you take so you probably remove these from the wall, you put them on the floor and you balance on them. There's a flat side on the back and you probably like stand it down, you probably balance on it. It probably helps you with your balance. That's probably what those are. Yeah. I had to think about it. You see, there's another one over here. Are there? Yeah, there are more. Well, wait. These ones look attached to the wall, though. That one over there didn't... These two look detached from the wall. But then, why wouldn't they all be in one place where they're easy to... Like, these ones are back here behind the equipment where you can't easily reach it. Maybe it's just a decoration element. Yeah, it's probably just decorate. I thought it was something you stand on and it helps you with your balance because you have to balance on it or something, but it looks to be just a decoration. But it's weird that it's only in certain parts of the room. That's strange. Okay. Evan says, when are the boiler rooms going to open on the Queen Mary again? You know, I wish I knew, honestly, because that was, even though there's nothing in those rooms anymore and they're pretty much empty, it was still a fun tour. You know, I took that tour back in 2020 when they were still doing it. And so I was told a couple of years back when the ship had reopened, you know, back in 2023, I was told that those tours were going to resume within a matter of months. And it's been 2 years since then. So yeah, I wish I knew. I actually don't know when they're going to be back. I have pretty much just kind of decided to wait on it because I used to report on it and be like, oh, it should be opening soon. But then I decided, I'm like, you know what? It keeps getting pushed back and back. I'm just going to wait and see if they ever reopen. But I don't know, honestly. I'm not sure why they haven't resumed them. I mean, technically, all the safety systems are in place. You know, they've got the bilge pumps and water intrusion alarms put in place. So I don't imagine that it's because, you know, they're worried that, you know, there's no easy egress out of the rooms. There is, and there's safety systems in place. Maybe it's... I did hear that some of the watertight bulkheads, which have had openings cut into them, you know, to remove the boilers and all that, I've heard that some of those openings have been made a little bit smaller as they raise the bulkhead opening to allow for a more easy what do you call it? It prevents the water from spreading if there's ever like a leak or something, and it confines it better to that one boiler room. Even though the bulkhead is not fully enclosed anymore, having the bulkhead bottom raised as high as possible does help extend the amount of time that room can be flooded and gives time for the pumps to pump out the water. So maybe when they raise those bulkheads, it actually kind of cut off some of the tour route. They might have to raise some of the tour. I don't know for sure. They might have to raise some of the tour route a few feet up to accommodate that. I don't know. Cat L says, I really hope they put some ballast to lower Queen Mary in the water. She sits rather high. So, yeah, she's sitting about 12 inches high. I know it seems like she's higher than that, but actually, what it is her the red and white, the white stripe with the red fouling paint beneath it. That's actually 4 feet higher than it used to be. They've painted that 4 feet higher. They did that to make the ship more photogenic when people take photos of it, because you can see it better. I mean, that's all a matter of opinion as to whether it looks better or not. But it is 4 feet higher than it used to be. But the ship is also sitting 12 inches higher out of the water than she used to. And that's because of the removal of the lifeboats. But the ship is ballasted. It's been ballasted almost to the amount that compensates for the weight of the boilers. They couldn't fully ballast her to the full weight of the boilers that have been lost, because that's a lot of weight. But they were able to ballast her. So all of her double bottom keels tanks, well, at least most of them, have drilling mud put in them. The drilling mud is much heavier than water, and so it helps to weigh down the ship. And so they have drilling mud in them, and they have inspected all those tanks, and they are in amazing condition. They still have their waterproofing material still on them, believe it or not, after all these years. So all those tanks are fine. There's no major corrosion to speak of. They're in great condition. You can learn about that on our website, RMSQM Wiki. There's a link in the description below. We have a page called Current Condition. It's also called Update as well. The page has 2 different names. But you can learn about the Queen Mary and the condition she's in, and you can see pictures of those double bottom tanks. You can see, I took pictures from the reports. They have the engineering reports that are made public, and I used those pictures and put them on the website. And so you can see what the condition of the double tanks are right now. But yeah, they are fully ballasted with drilling mud, and the ones that don't have drilling mud have water in them, fresh water. And they use fresh water because it's less corrosive than salt water. And even the wing tanks on the ship are filled with water. So all of the ballast tanks on the ship have some kind of ballast in them at the moment, and that's to help weigh down the ship. But even then, it's still not enough. So they would need to put something in there that helps to weigh it down even more. Perhaps the Yarrow project can help with that. So we'll see. Wouldn't be able to help very much, but it'd do something. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I never met Don Lynch. Slow Snail. Yeah. Yeah, I know Bill Sauter and Ken Marshall very superficially. I don't think I know them very personally, but I've talked to them quite a few times, and, yeah, it's really great, They're like, they're both very knowledgeable, especially Ken. He helped to recolorize a photograph I have of the Queen Mary for the website. The colors were not very accurate. He has an extreme eye for detail when it comes to the colors of paintings and things. That's his talent. So he was able to look at one of the photographs we had, and he said, "Oh, you know this." So he went and corrected the color for us. So that was really cool. So that's on the main page of our RMSQM wiki. On the main page, you see a picture of the Queen Mary sailing down the Solent, and he recolorized that one himself. Just reading comments here. Hey Ron, how's it going? Arnaud says there's a secret room in this demo. Does you know? Yep, I do. I know a different way to get to it too. Let's see, let me think. Okay, I have to go down this way. Yeah, why don't I show you guys the secret room? Unless I get there and you guys are like, that's not the secret room, there's a different room. Then I'll be like, oh, okay. But let me go down and you can tell me if I have the correct secret room in mind. I have to find the right place. I think it's this one over here. Oh, no. It was this one. So I'm assuming the ash place is the secret room you were referring to. It's a room where they could dispose of ash on the ship. And in this case, when they got to port, this hatch would open up. They have all these drums of ash that are being pulled up from the boiler rooms down below. See, there's one at the end of the line. I can zoom in. See? One at the end of the line. And they pull it up through this pipe. And then they can hand it off to, you know, someone at the dock and get rid of the ash and stuff like that. And that's what this room was for. Otherwise, when they were at sea, they have ash injectors. You know, why don't I just show you guys what's down here? And whoa! Sorry, I knew I was gonna do that. Yeah. So one of the ways to get up to that room is to go up these ladders and stuff and get in there. But I took us through what I call the shortcut. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, right. So this hole here is for the ash ejector. And what you do is you bring these barrels full of, like, ash and junk, and you dump it down this hole. And it's like kind of like a toilet. You turn a handle here, and then that flushes it up this pipe here, and it goes all the way to above the surface of the water, because as you know, we're in the boiler rooms, so we're actually underwater. But that flushes it up to the surface of the water and ejects the ash into the ocean. Yep, all that poisonous sulfur dioxide going into the ocean. But yeah, that's what that was for. So we are in, well, actually, this is boiler room 2. Or no, wait, no, it says fire furnace number 2. I don't know what boiler room we're in, actually. I don't know my way around the ship enough to be able to say for sure what boiler room we're in. Man, look at that. Spooky. So, yeah. You know, Queen Mary had a marine Scotch boiler like these. So these are marine Scotch boilers with a total of 6 furnaces, 3 on one side, 3 on the other. This is double-ended. Queen Mary had 3 double-ended Scotch boilers, but they had 4 furnaces. And it didn't run on coal like this. It ran off of fuel oil, so there would be an atomizer inside the furnace that would blast and spray the fuel, and it would ignite, and that's what heated the boiler. But anyway, Queen Mary's had 4 furnaces, and it was a larger diameter than this too. Imagine how big this boiler is. The ones on Queen Mary were larger, but those 3 boilers on Queen Mary were for the essentially the hotel services is what they called it. All the stuff that has to do with passenger services that require steam and stuff like that, and even for operating the forward turbo generator room on Queen Mary, which also supplied power to the hotel services aboard the ship. So that's what the Scotch boilers were for. But Queen Mary had 24 Yarrow boilers for the purposes of propulsion and other non-hotel services on the ship. So let me get to some questions here. And let me know if that was the secret room you guys are talking about, was the ash room. Kat says, try staying on A or M deck. There's some work to be done on B deck. It's also the deck where ghost hunters run around. Yeah, I'll be staying on M deck. Hello, yes, happy good says, there are a couple of lifeboats to view, but I believe they demolished most of them, which as a historian I find sad. So they demolished about half of the ones that Queen Mary had. Queen Mary had 22 lifeboats remaining. Originally she had 24, but she had 22 lifeboats remaining, and they were able to save 11 of them. So there are 3 on site. There's 2 on the ship and 1 on the dock, and then there are 8 more in storage in Long Beach. You can actually see them on Google Maps. But yeah, there are 8 more in storage, but 11 were destroyed. And so about half of the lifeboats, and they had to be, honestly, there was nowhere to keep them. The city didn't have the capacity to store them anywhere, and they couldn't stay up there because they were a hazard. But the ones, the 8 that are in storage, plus the 3 on site, will eventually one day be restored when the ship has enough money. And that'll be required through, funding and that kind of thing. So, by the way, you can donate to the Queen Mary in several ways. One of the ways is actually by buying my merchandise. At the moment, we have a deal where we're going to donate about 5% of our profits to QMI Restore the Queen, which is the 501c3 nonprofit that is helping to fund restoration efforts for the Queen Mary. You can also donate directly to QMI Restore the Queen on their site, qmi.care, and you can donate directly to them, and that'll help go towards various restoration projects on the Queen Mary, as well as you can go on the Queen Mary Hotel website, and under their Adopt a Rivet campaign, you can donate anywhere from $10 to $100. If you donate $10, you get a certificate that you've helped donate towards the Queen Mary's restoration. And if you donate $100, you supposedly get a replica rivet. It'll probably be made of resin or something, so probably not metal, but maybe, I don't know, it could be made of metal. But you get a replica rivet. And, yeah. Although somebody donated and was like, hey, they never asked for my, what do you call it? address, or they're like, how do I get my rivet? Do they mail it? And I'm like, I honestly don't know. So just keep that in mind, that if you donate directly with the Queen Mary and you give them $100 to get a replica rivet, that at the moment their website is not asking for your address. So just keep that in mind, because that's something nobody really expected. We were like, wait a minute, how come we can't just give them the address, you know? So yeah, keep that in mind. But otherwise, you can donate with QMI Restore the Queen, and they do have a thing where if you donate certain amounts of money, you can get certain things in return. Different like lapel pins and stuff like that. Some really neat stuff. But yeah, also again, if you buy our merchandise, 5% of our profits will be donated to QMI Restore the Queen. And in the future, if we get more and more people buying our merchandise, we'll donate 10%. But at the moment, we're staying at 5%. Because we need to make up those expenses. Expenses for the merchandise and all that stuff. The merchandise also helps us to pay for the wiki site, the RMSQM wiki. Helps us keep the domain name to that and stuff. Yeah. All right, let me check my phone for any comments. Cat L says, I think they were trying to sell the boats but found no buyers. No, they were trying to give away the boats for free, and there were a lot of people who wanted them. In fact, a lot of people came forward. QMI Restore the Queen, I was working for them at the time when that happened, and we as a group came forward and said we would like to acquire one of the lifeboats. Again, they were for free. The problem was the city had really strict requirements for acquiring a boat. You know, there was the normal stuff like you had to have a proper restoration plan due to the fact that, you know, the boats contained lead paint, and you have to have like a suitable plan for taking on that responsibility, which was fine. Most people can accommodate a lead paint issue, you know. But the other thing too was that you needed to be able to take the boat away in 30 days. They gave us 30 days. I kid you not, 30 days. That's difficult because if you ever like talk to people who run museums and stuff, they'll tell you that a lot of the times exhibits and things, it takes them months and months and months to work out the details and get artifacts to put together an exhibit, especially if they have to pay for it and pay for its transportation and whatnot. So it can take up to 6 to 12 months to move an artifact like a lifeboat, which is absolutely massive. It's a wide load. It's 12 feet wide, which means it's just a little bit wider at times than the lanes on a road or a highway, and it's 36 feet long, which is incredibly long. So just moving the lifeboats would have required getting wide load permits through every single city they move the lifeboat through. And so it's difficult to get those permits within 30 days. Especially, there was one company who wanted to acquire the lifeboats, and they are based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So they wanted to move the lifeboat to Halifax, but they couldn't because 30 days was not enough. So we at QMI Restore the Queen, we talked to the city of Long Beach and said, can you extend that further? Because we really need more time. And the city said, sure. They gave us 30 more days. So there was still only 2 months to work with. Just 2 months that nobody could do it. And so that is why I say that even though the lifeboats were for free, there were a lot of people interested in acquiring them, but nobody could. Nobody could possibly come up with a plan for transporting and meeting the requirements the city had for transportation and for care of the lifeboat, and do all that within 60 days. It was just impossible. Just impossible. So yeah, that's why. And I wanted to mention that because the newspapers were talking about this and they were like, oh, nobody's interested in the Queen Mary lifeboats. And it's like, that's not true. Because we had Mary Rower, the executive director of QMI. She went out to the city of Long Beach, said, oh, if you're interested in a lifeboat, come to this open house we're having at the Queen Mary. And she went, and they were not prepared. They were like, oh, somebody's actually here, you know, and there was kind of a mix up as to like where she should meet the city officials and all that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of like it was so last minute, and I don't think they were expecting anybody to show up, but she did. And so, yeah, it was just like really hectic, I think, you know, and so, yeah, there just wasn't enough time to do anything. I'm just gonna check the comments again. Oh, Arnaud says the G-deck bunker. Yeah, I've been in there before. Titanic Graphics says, can you get to the wireless room? I was actually already there earlier in the live stream. The G-deck bunker is unknown, but it was accessible and nobody go to see the room. Oh, okay. Well, I can take you guys to there. I've been in there before. We should go down this way. I mean, I know there's nobody else on the ship with me, but, you know, rules are rules. Yeah, rules are rules. All right, I'll be the only one to laugh at that. Okay, and then way out this side. So the bunker. Now, again, bear with me. I don't remember which boiler room is which boiler room, but I'll find it because I've been in there before. Let's see here. So it's not there. Come on. This wheelbarrow, and then the boiler gets in my way. I can't get around either of them. All right, here we go. I don't think it's this bunker, but you know, we just gotta double check. No, it's not this one. Okay. So then you have to go to the other boiler room. Oh, yep, this is it. Here we go. So you climb up all these. Sometimes you can get a bit stuck. And then you got to walk across this board. See this board? It's a key that you do not fall off the board or else you go back down. There we go. And now we are in the coal bunker. or at least one of them. And what was really cool was when I first discovered this coal bunker, I didn't know that, you see, I thought the coal bunkers were only vertical, you know, so there's where we came in, that red spot down there, right? And there's a bulkhead here, and then one there. And so when you look at models and stuff of Titanic, the coal bunker seems only this wide, this narrow gap, right? But what you don't know is that the coal bunker also goes over the boiler room, like this. There's mountains of coal up here. And I didn't know that. And you could get to the other coal bunker by crossing over. Like this. And see, what they do is they have the men, those poor men, man, they had to be down here and with their shovels and stuff, and they shovel the coal down through this hole into the bunker. And yeah, so there'd be piles of coal everywhere. I mean, you can imagine it's probably a tripping hazard too, because look, I'm standing on a pile of coal in between these two tall openings that I could fall right down and, you know, break my neck. But also, coal is dangerous to breathe in, you know, like the coal, what do you call it? The dust. The dust can infect your eyes and your lungs and all that. It's just very unpleasant. Creates like an acidic mix in your eyes and lungs. So yeah, this is the coal bunker. And yeah, I'm you know, come to think of it, I very rarely come over here. So people probably haven't seen it on my channel yet. And then we can drop back down. Whee! And the coal fire is here somewhere too. I don't think it's in the same bunker. Let me think. That famous Titanic coal fire is somewhere. Oh, maybe it was on that side. Let's go over here. No. Yeah, I get turned around so easily. Where is it? There we go. So remember that big, huge coal fire that everybody blames as the reason why Titanic sank? And everybody's like, oh, that coal fire, it ruined the ship and that caused the hull to be weak and the ship filled with water. No, it was this tiny little spot fire that they were dealing with. Tiny little thing. And by the way, the area where the iceberg broke through was way up here. Okay? Way up here. Near. Right there. The coal fire is way down here in this tiny little pile. That's it. That's all there was. It had nothing to do with the iceberg. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. Nothing. Two different spots. So I hope people know that now. Great. Now I can't climb up here. There we go. Yeah. All right, folks. I think I'm going to end the live stream here because we've been on for 2.5 hours. I think I'm caught up with comments. There isn't really much I could say. Ellie, you could rent out a 12-foot lead-ridden lifeboat for $1,300 a month. What white line? Wildflying says, I didn't know your merch helped the Queen as well. All the more reason to buy some. Yes, exactly, folks. You buy my merch, we'll donate 5% of our profits to the Queen Mary. And if enough people buy our merch, and it seems doable. We'll move that up to 10% of our profits will be donated to QMI Restore the Queen, to help the Queen Mary. So yeah, and our merch, the link is in the description below. It's Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth stuff. There's even a little bit of the H4 Hercules in there as well. And then also Art Deco stuff. So, and we've only just started. So we've got lots of stuff that we're currently working on that will eventually make its way to our store. Our store is on the Printful website. So Printful, but it's one word. And our store is called Art Decorium. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And again, the link is in the description below. So yeah, be sure to check it out. And we'll have a lot more stuff in the future. Especially a lot of home goods and things, and stuff that you could buy that you could keep around the house, and then eventually we'll probably make a few things ourselves and sell it as well. We want to eventually open our store on Amazon, but Amazon costs a lot to open a store. We'd be losing money right now if we opened an Amazon store, so we're gonna wait on that. But eventually we will sell on Amazon, and that way it'll be much easier for people to get stuff and find the store. So anyway, folks, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye, everybody.